The '67 Mustang's engine gave one final strangled cough before dying completely. I coasted to the shoulder of Route 66, the last echoes of motion fading into absolute stillness. Miles of Arizona desert stretched in every direction. No cars, no lights, just towering red mesas casting long afternoon shadows across the cracked asphalt. The digital thermometer on my dash flashed 103 degree F before the electrical system failed entirely. I'd passed through Seligman about 40 minutes back, a faded tourist trap clinging to nostalgia and forgotten Americana. The next town was at least 30 miles ahead. My cell phone displayed the words I dreaded. No service. As sweat beaded on my forehead, I remembered the wall of missing persons posters in Seligman's roadside diner. Yellowed papers, some dating back decades. All men, early 30s, dark hair, all driving alone, all with vintage cars, men who looked unsettlingly like me. The waitress had caught me studying them. "Folks disappear out here," she'd said, refilling my coffee. "Desert's hungry, always has been." I'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. The first time the tow truck passed, I was half under the Mustang's hood. The grinding rumble of its diesel engine approached slowly from behind, accompanied by a distinct metallic scraping, like iron dragging across iron. I straightened, waving both arms. The truck, ancient, rust-eaten, with faded lettering I couldn't quite make out, crawled by at perhaps 15 miles per hour. The windows were tinted nearly black. The driver never slowed, never acknowledged me. I watched its taillights recede into the distance, disappearing around a curve. 20 minutes later, it passed again, from the same direction, which was impossible, unless it had turned around and somehow circled back without my noticing. This time, it slowed almost to a stop alongside my Mustang. The passenger window lowered just enough to reveal darkness within. No face, no offer of help. That strange metallic scraping sound intensified, as if something inside the cab was shifting position. After 10 excruciating seconds, it accelerated away. My mounting unease became genuine fear when, 30 minutes later, it appeared a third time, from the opposite direction. The sun was setting when I decided to walk. Better to move toward civilization than wait for rescue that wasn't coming. I grabbed my emergency backpack, locked the Mustang, a meaningless gesture in this emptiness, and started walking west. The fading light painted the desert in blood-red hues, transforming familiar rock formations into hunched, watching figures. The highway's white line stretched before me like a tether to safety. If I could just follow it long enough. The sound came first, that distinctive diesel rumble accompanied by the scraping of metal. But no headlights appeared on the horizon. No vehicle approached from either direction. The sound grew louder, closer, all around me, yet nowhere visible. Then movement caught my eye, down an unmarked dirt road I hadn't noticed before, perhaps 50 yards back. Dust rose in a telltale plume. The road curved behind what looked like a Bureau of Land Management restricted area sign, partially obscured by decades of sun damage. The truck was off-road, running parallel to Route 66, watching, waiting. Night falls quickly in the desert. One moment twilight, the next, absolute darkness broken only by a canopy of stars and a sliver of moon. My phone flashlight cast a pathetic circle of illumination on the asphalt. Each step forward felt like moving through invisible resistance. The temperature had plummeted, yet sweat still soaked my shirt. When headlights finally appeared behind me, I felt a surge of hope, a passing motorist, salvation. But the approaching engine had that familiar grinding rumble and that scraping sound, like metal joints that needed oil. I stepped off the road, into the scrub brush and sand. Perhaps if I wasn't visible, the tow truck crawled past slower than ever. Its headlights illuminated a highway sign I hadn't noticed. Seligman, 5 miles impossible. I'd been walking west for nearly 2 hours. Seligman should be far behind me, unless I'd been walking east, or unless the sign was wrong. The truck's brake lights flared red, then extinguished as it turned onto another unmarked dirt road, disappearing into the darkness. As it passed, I caught a glimpse of the driver, a silhouette more than a person, impossibly thin, head too large for its body. And that sound, that metallic scraping, came not from the truck, but from the figure itself, as if its joints were made of grinding gears rather than bone and sinew. I found the first Polaroid photo. 20 minutes later, lying in the middle of the highway as if freshly placed. My Mustang. From an angle that could only have been taken from the tow truck as it passed, but more disturbing. A dark figure standing behind the car, watching me work under the hood. A figure I'd never seen. My hands trembled so badly, I nearly dropped the photo. I forced myself to study it more carefully, squinting in the dim light of my phone. The figure stood unnaturally straight, tall, gaunt, almost scarecrow-like. Where its feet touched the ground, the asphalt appeared discolored, as if the pavement itself was being consumed. And it was holding something. A vintage Polaroid camera. The photo was warm to the touch. Recently taken. Recently placed. The second photo appeared 100 yards later. Me, walking along Route 66 at sunset. Taken from ahead of me. The same figure now stood behind me, closer than before, watching. In this image, I could make out more details. Skeletal fingers that seemed to terminate in small metallic points, like tiny tools. A featureless face except for what appeared to be a camera lens where eyes should be. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting frantically through darkness. Nothing but empty highway. The third photo waited another 100 yards ahead. Me, looking at the first photo. The figure now standing just feet behind me. Arm outstretched toward my back. Its hand was transforming in the image. Metal parts reconfiguring into something resembling surgical tools. I dropped the photo as if burned. Looked up. There it stood. There it stood, directly in the beam of my flashlight. 10 feet away, 7 feet tall, impossibly thin, body composed of what appeared to be desert detritus, metal scraps, automotive parts, dried vegetation, all moving together in a grotesque approximation of humanity. Where its face should be, only the reflective glass of a camera lens caught my light and threw it back at me. The metallic scraping sound intensified as it raised its camera. I ran. Dawn found me huddled beside a massive boulder. Having left the highway hours earlier, my water was gone. My phone dead. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. I'd fled blindly, guided only by terror and moonlight. Now in the harsh clarity of morning, I had no idea which direction held salvation. Movement caught my eye. Far in the distance, a glint of metal. My Mustang. Had I somehow circled back? I stumbled toward it, hope and dread warring within me. It wasn't my car. As I drew closer, I saw it was a scrapyard of sorts, hidden within a deep arroyo that couldn't be seen from the highway. Dozens of vehicles in various states of decay, arranged in a rough circle like a mechanical Stonehenge. At its center sat the rusted tow truck, engine ticking as if recently turned off. Most disturbing were the cars themselves. A 72 Chevelle, an 85 Camaro, a 2010 Prius, vehicles spanning decades, all with out-of-state plates, all vintage or classic models, all with doors hanging open, as if their occupants had stepped out and vanished. My Mustang was there too, hood still open, looking exactly as I'd left it yesterday, except it couldn't be. I'd walked for hours in the opposite direction, unless I hadn't. A wall of a small shed at the center of this automotive graveyard caught my attention. Photos, hundreds of them. Polaroids of stranded motorists, some examining their broken-down vehicles, some walking along Route 66, some running in terror. And behind each one, that same tall, gaunt figure, growing closer in each sequential photo. The final image in each series showed a transformation. The figure and the motorist merging, the human form becoming distorted as metal parts intruded into flesh. The faces in these last photos showed expressions of agony and awareness. A notebook lay open beside the photos, handwritten entries dating back to 1961. The desert requires tribute, not just blood, knowledge, experience, perspective. Each harvest must be carefully selected. Each must contribute to the whole. The locals understand. They direct suitable candidates to the feeding grounds. They maintain the signs. They never speak of what happens here. I heard the diesel engine rumble to life behind me. I remember fragments from after. Metal against skin. The camera's flash blinding me repeatedly. The scraping sound becoming part of me. Learning to move with new joints, new purpose. I remember the first one I harvested. A woman in a broken-down Volkswagen. How I circled her car precisely as I had been circled. How I took her photos in the exact sequence. How I brought her here, to the arroyo that has become our archive. I remember teaching her to drive the route. 3 weeks later, A family on a road trip pulled into Seligman's roadside diner. Their teenage daughter noticed the wall of missing persons flyers, one newer than the rest. My face stared back at her. Above the words, "Last seen Route 66 near Seligman. Folks disappear out here," the waitress said, refilling coffee cups, her eyes lingering on the father's vintage Corvette parked outside. "Desert's hungry, always has been." She adjusted the road map on their table, circling a route that would take them past the stretch where I had broken down, where I now patrol. Outside, a rusted tow truck rumbled past, heading east into the emptiness. In the driver's seat sat a figure, tall, gaunt, almost scarecrow-like, metal parts gleaming dully in the sunlight. Around its neck hung a vintage Polaroid camera, and beside it, learning how to drive the route, sat another figure, newer, still adjusting to its role, still learning the ritual of preservation through transformation, still learning to harvest the highway. For the desert requires tribute, and we are its collectors. Part human, part machine, all hunger, and I never run out of film. I knew I was lost the moment my GPS signal disappeared. The logging roads of Pocahontas County, West Virginia, aren't like other roads. They're living things, twisting through dense Appalachian forests, swallowing vehicles whole, erasing digital traces as easily as breathing. My rental Jeep's tires crunched over loose gravel, climbing deeper into terrain that seemed to reshape itself with each turn. The forest pressed close, pine branches scraping against windows like desperate fingers. I was tracking a story, the disappearance of the Miller family, Tom, Sarah, and their daughter Emma, who vanished during a camping trip 3 years ago. Local authorities called it a missing persons case. I knew it was something more. Hidden in my research bag, classified documents from a forgotten military research project, Project Echo. Psychological warfare studies conducted in remote Appalachian regions during the late 1980s, experiments in human tracking, isolation protocols, and behavioral manipulation. The documents suggested something far darker than a simple missing persons case. The first sign of trouble came at 2:47 p.m. My GPS screen flickered, then went blank. The radio dissolved into white noise. Even my phone signal bars dropped to zero. Then I saw the campsite. It wasn't abandoned. Not exactly. More like suspended. A tent stood half collapsed, its blue nylon fabric torn in precise diagonal cuts. Camping chairs arranged in a perfect circle, as if their occupants had simply evaporated mid-conversation. A Coleman lantern lay on its side, glass cracked but not shattered. Scattered around the site, personal items that told a fragmented story. A child's red sneaker. One sneaker, no pair. A water bottle with bite marks along its rim. Most chilling, Emma Miller's diary, pages carefully arranged outside the tent. The last entry, dated the day of their disappearance. Dad says we're being watched, not by animals, by something else. The forest knows our names. Dark stains, rust brown, mark the tent's interior. Blood? Or something else. The ATV's approach broke the silence. First, a distant rumble. Then the distinct sound of all-terrain tires grinding against loose rock and pine needles. Coming closer, methodical, purposeful. I ducked behind a massive fallen pine, heart hammering against my ribs. My hand found the hunting knife on my belt, a stupid precaution that suddenly felt inadequate. The vehicle emerged through a curtain of mist, mud splattered. No license plate. No license plate. Driven by a figure wearing a Forest Service jacket and a cap pulled low. But something was off. The driver moved too precisely, like someone performing a role, scanning the campsite with mechanical movements. A radio on the ATV crackled to life. A voice emerged, clinical, detached. Site 247 confirmed. Subject documentation in progress. I remembered the Project Echo documents, buried deep in military archives. Experiments in human tracking using psychological manipulation, creating scenarios that would isolate and study human behavior under extreme stress. The Miller family wasn't a missing persons case. They were research subjects. The ATV driver dismounted, pulled out a camera with movements too precise to be human, started photographing the scene with methodical efficiency, then looked directly at my hiding spot, and smiled. The notebook found later would reveal fragments of a terrifying truth. Extraction protocol. Pocahontas County Research Station objective. Long-term behavioral study of isolation response subject groups. Family units isolated researchers. Unexpected. Witnesses, my name was already added to the list. I made a desperate run for my Jeep. Engine roaring to life. Tires spinning on loose gravel. But they were prepared. 3 ATs emerged from different points in the forest, blocking every escape route. Drivers wearing identical Forest Service jackets. Cameras where faces should be. A voice came through a mounted speaker. Subject acquisition protocol initiated. Do not resist. The forest seemed to close in. Trees bending. Shadows moving with unnatural precision. My Jeep's engine died. Electronics flickering, then complete silence. Weeks later, a hiker would find my Jeep, perfectly positioned. Items inside meticulously arranged. No trace of me, just a notebook. And a list of names. The last entry read, Witness acquired. Research continues. Beneath it, a stamp. Project Echo. Phase 7 Appalachian Research Division. I remember fragments. Bright lights, precise movements, voices discussing data points. Sometimes I see the Miller family. Tom, Sarah, Lil Emma. We're all part of the collection now. The Appalachian forests have their own rules. And their own researchers, always watching, always documenting, always collecting. Cut. The neon sign flickered Motel Haven in sickly green, buzzing like a dying wasp against the black West Texas night. I pulled my beat-up sedan into the lot off I-10 near Van Horn. Gravel crunching under tires, my eyes burning from 16 hours on the road. I'm Lena, 29, a sales rep chasing commissions across the Southwest. Exhaustion clung to me like damp rot. And this dive was the only stop for miles. The air hit me as I stepped out. Hot, stale, laced with diesel and something sour. The motel squatted low, its peeling paint glowing faintly under a crooked moon. Windows dark except for the clerk's booth. Inside, the lobby smelled of mildew and stale coffee. The clerk, mid-40s, wiry, with a sweat-stained cap, barely looked up from his crossword. Room 6, he muttered, sliding a key across the counter, his fingers twitching. I signed the log, my pen scratching loud in the quiet, and his eyes darted to my hand. Then away. Quiet night? I asked, forcing a smile. He froze, jaw tight, and rasped. Always is. His voice was gravel and the hairs on my neck stood up. Room 6 was a time capsule. Faded floral wallpaper, a sagging bed, a TV bolted to the dresser. The air was thick, heavy with dust and a faint metallic tang. I dropped my bag, the floorboards groaning, and yanked open the bedside drawer for a charger cable. Beneath a dog-eared Gideon Bible, a Polaroid glinted. I pulled it out, my breath catching. It showed a woman, early 20s, eyes wide with terror, wrists bound with duct tape, sitting on this bed. The same floral pattern stared back, the same cracked lamp in the corner. My pulse hammered, the photo trembling in my hand. A low thump hit the wall outside. Slow, deliberate, like a boot testing the ground. I froze, ears straining. The desert was silent, but the thump came again, closer, circling the room. I shoved the photo in my pocket and crept to the window, peeling back the curtain. Nothing but shadows pooling under a flickering street lamp. My breath fogged the glass, and a faint scrape, metal on metal, slithered from the door. I checked the lock, rusted, flimsy, and wedged a chair under the knob, its legs scraping the floor. I called the front desk, my voice shaky. Hey, what's the deal with room 6? Found something weird. The clerk's line crackled, then went dead. Dead. I redialed. Nothing. My skin prickled as I paced, the Polaroid burning against my thigh. I grabbed my phone and searched Van Horn Motel incidents. A 2019 article popped up. Missing woman last seen at Motel Haven. The grainy photo matched the girl in the Polaroid. Sarah Klein, 24, vanished after checking in. My stomach lurched. The clerk had to know something. A sharp tap-tap hit the window, quick, insistent. I spun, heart in my throat, and saw only darkness. The tap came again, like nails on glass, and a shadow shifted. Just beyond the light, tall and hunched. I backed away, clutching my keys, the room's walls seeming to lean in. The phone rang, shrill, jarring. Shrill, jarring. I snatched it, expecting the clerk, but a low voice hissed, "You shouldn't have looked." The line cut out, and the thump returned. Now at the door, heavy, rhythmic. I bolted to the bathroom, locking the door, the tiles cold under my bare feet. The mirror was fogged, despite no steam, and a greasy smear streaked its edge, like a handprint, too large. My breath came in gasps as I dialed 911, whispering, "I'm at Motel Haven, room 6. Someone's trying to get in." Static buzzed, then a dispatcher's voice. "Stay put, ma'am. Units are 10 minutes out." 10 minutes was an eternity. The door rattled. Bang, bang, splinters cracking. I gripped my keys like a weapon, the metal biting my palm. The metal biting my palm. A floorboard creaked outside the bathroom, slow and deliberate, followed by a low chuckle. Wet, guttural, like a throat clogged with mud. My blood froze. The clerk's twitchy face flashed in my mind, his nervous dodge, his trembling hands. He wasn't just hiding something. He was part of it. I scanned the bathroom. Nothing but a rusted vent and a cracked window, too small to climb through. The bang hit again, the door frame groaning. I yanked open the vent, dust choking me, and found a folded note tipped inside. "They keep them here. Run." My hands shook as I stuffed it in my pocket. The bathroom door buckled. Crack. And a voice growled, "No one leaves room 6. It wasn't the clerk's voice. Deeper, hungrier. Desperation clawed me. I smashed the window with the toilet tank lid, glass shattering, shards cutting my knuckles. The desert air rushed in, hot and dry. As I squeezed through, jagged edges snagging my jacket, I hit the ground outside, gravel biting my palms, and ran for my car. Footsteps pounded behind. Crunch, crunch, fast, closing in. I fumbled the keys, engine roaring to life, as a figure loomed in the rear view. Tall, hooded, eyes glinting like whetstones. Tires screeched as I floored it, the motel shrinking in the mirror, but my heart didn't slow. I pulled over at a gas station an hour later, hands trembling as I called the cops again. They raided Motel Haven, finding bloodstains under room 6 carpet, duct tape, and more Polaroids. Dozens of faces, all missing persons. The clerk, Roy Tanner, confessed. He lured drifters for a local ring, men who paid to hunt in the desert. Roy's motive was simple, cash and fear of the ring's leader, a man known only as Cutter, still at large. Sarah Cleaney's case reopened, but her body was never found. I'm in Dallas now, doors bolted, lights always on. Last week, a Polaroid slid under my apartment door. No stamp, no address. It showed me asleep in room 6, my face pale, eyes half open. A scroll on the back read, "Cutter says hi." Every night I hear it, tap tap, on my window, and a shadow lingers just beyond the streetlight, waiting. I clutched my keys, knowing he's out there, his hunt unfinished. The heat shimmer off his 50 wasn't just distorting the horizon. It felt like it was warping reality itself. Ben gripped the steering wheel. The vast sun-bleached Nevada desert stretching infinitely on either side. The loneliest road in America. 3 hours in, the name felt less like a slogan and more like a diagnosis. He hadn't seen another soul. Just the drone of his engine, the hypnotic hum of tires, and a silence so profound it felt physical. He was driving west, running from the ghost of a failed business, seeking the kind of empty clarity only such desolate places could offer. Then he saw it, far ahead. A dark sedan swerved abruptly onto the shoulder, kicking up a plume of dust before coming to a stop, almost vanishing into a dip near some rocky outcrops. It wasn't a smooth pull-off. It looked urgent, uncontrolled, concern, maybe mixed with a flicker of unease in this profound isolation, made Ben slow down. He reached for his binoculars. Maybe someone needed help? He raised them, dialing the focus knob, the distant scene swimming into clarity. 2 figures emerged from the sedan. Both wore dark clothing, one noticeably taller. Moving with tense energy, they went to the trunk. As they heaved something out, a large object clumsily wrapped in dark, stained canvas, bound with rope. Ben's initial concern curdled. The shape was unmistakably that of a human body. As they struggled, a corner of the canvas snagged on the trunk latch, pulling away just enough for Ben to see, with sickening clarity, a pale, limp human hand flopped free before being hastily tucked back under. A dark, wet stain was spreading slowly across the lower part of the canvas bundle. Ben's breath caught. He felt cold despite the oppressive heat. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a disposal. He watched, frozen yet unable to look away as the figures, one wearing thick, dark leather gloves despite the furnace-like air, dragged the heavy bundle off the road. Disappearing briefly into the scrub and rocks, they reappeared moments later, empty-handed, brushing themselves down. The taller figure glanced back towards the highway, raising a gloved hand to shield their eyes, scanning. Ben instinctively slid lower in his seat, the binoculars still halfway raised. The figure froze, spotting Ben's car, a lone metallic glint miles away but starkly visible on the empty road. The figure's arm shot out, pointing directly at him. The second figure spun around. Ben heard, or perhaps imagined, a sharp barking sound carried on the wind, too harsh for laughter, utterly devoid of humor. They knew had seen. He dropped the binoculars, the plastic clattering against the dash. Shoving the car into gear, he stomped on the accelerator, tires screeching on the hot asphalt. The rear-view mirror showed the dark sedan, throwing up dust as it surged back onto the highway, headlights blazing. The chase began across the shimmering void. Ben pushed his car to its limit, the engine screaming, needle trembling past 100. But the sedan, sleek and powerful, gained relentlessly. The empty highway was a trap. No exits, no towns, no chance encounters. Phone check. No service. The isolation was now his enemy. The sedan filled his mirror, grille menacing. He could see the two dark silhouettes inside, featureless, implacable. Their high beams flashed, on, off, on, a blinding, aggressive pulse. Ben's knuckles were white on the wheel. Closer. The sedan slid into the empty oncoming lane, drawing level. The dark-tinted passenger window glided down. Ben braced himself, heart hammering, expecting a weapon. Instead, he heard it, the faint but distinct crackle of a radio transmission, cut short. Police scanner. The calculated chill of it ran deeper than the threat of a gun. They weren't just thugs. They were prepared. Ben swerved right, forcing them back. They retaliated immediately, a heavy thud jarring his car as they bumped his rear quarter panel. He fought for control. They hit him again. Harder. The crunch of metal sickening. They were trying to force him into the desert. GPS showed a sharp bend ahead, his only chance. He saw the sedan pull alongside again, readying for another ram. He timed it, slammed the brakes, wrenched the wheel into the curve. Tires screamed. His car fishtailed but held the road. He glanced back. The sedan, surprised, had braked hard, swerving slightly. He'd gained a few precious seconds. He floored it, praying for the distant pinpricks of light on the horizon to resolve into salvation. The sedan reappeared, closing fast. It drew level one last time, pacing him. Ben could feel their eyes on him. Suddenly, the sedan braked sharply, unexpectedly. It swerved back into its own lane and accelerated hard, rocketing past him, vanishing into the heat haze ahead as abruptly as the chase had begun. Ben stared after it, adrenaline leaving him trembling, confused. Why? He slowed, pulling over, engine ticking. Had they heard something else on their scanner? Seen someone else? He looked back. Nothing. Ahead. Nothing. Ahead. Just the immense, terrifying emptiness. He sat there for a long moment, catching his breath, the silence pressing in. Then, his eyes caught something fluttering on the roadside scrub near where the sedan had braked. A small scrap of dark, heavy canvas, stained with a patch of drying blood, snagged on a thorny bush, a discarded remnant. A warning? Or just carelessness? He drove on, arriving eventually at the cluster of lights. A desolate truck stop. He told the state troopers everything. They found the spot, the tire tracks, the disturbed ground, fibers matching the canvas Ben described, and faint traces of human blood they couldn't yet identify. But the body, the sedan, and the figures were gone, swallowed by the vastness. Ben was safe physically, but the loneliest road had seared something into him. The image of the hand, the sound of the crackling scanner, the bloodied scrap of canvas. He knew what kind of secrets the desert held. And he knew that the couriers of those secrets were still out there, perhaps listening, perhaps driving that same empty highway, forever checking their own rear-view mirrors. I always thought the warnings about picking up hitchhikers were overblown. Stories told late at night, meant to scare people from trusting strangers. Yet there I was, alone on Highway 1, headlights cutting through the fog along the dark cliffs of Big Sur, doing exactly what I'd sworn I'd never do. It was late, close to midnight. The ocean churned far below, hidden by thick mist, its angry hiss barely audible through the closed windows. I'd been driving since early afternoon, heading home to Monterey after visiting friends near Santa Barbara. Exhausted and half hypnotized by the monotonous road, I nearly missed him. He stood by the shoulder, thumb held out, face shadowed beneath a dark hoodie. A twinge of guilt tugged at me. The temperature had dropped, and the coastal wind was brutal tonight. Against my better judgment, I slowed the car, pulling to a reluctant stop. He jogged up quickly, leaning toward the passenger window. I rolled it down slightly. "Hey, can I catch a ride?" "Just headed north," he said softly. His voice was calm, unsettlingly controlled, a strange contrast to his disheveled appearance. "Sure. Hop in," I answered, feeling immediate regret even as the words left my mouth. He slid inside, bringing with him a faint metallic scent. My stomach tightened slightly as I caught sight of dried blood crusted near the cuffs of his torn jeans. I glanced away quickly, telling myself it could be anything. "Cold night tonight, isn't it?" he murmured, almost to himself. "Yeah," I replied uneasily. I noticed then that he carried a backpack, gripping it tightly between his legs. I didn't want to imagine what it might contain. For a few moments, silence hung heavily between us, broken only by the soft crackling from the police scanner app running quietly on my phone. He stiffened, glancing sharply at the device on the dashboard. "You listen to that a lot?" he asked. "Sometimes," I lied, trying to sound casual. "Helps me stay awake." His eyes lingered on the screen, posture rigid. "Cold night tonight, isn't it?" he repeated in exactly the same eerie tone as before. My pulse quickened. "You already said that." He paused as if confused. "Did I?" Unease stirred in my gut. "What's your name?" He hesitated slightly, eyes narrowing. "Nick." "Where you headed, Nick?" I asked cautiously, studying his reflection in the window. He shifted, rubbing his wrists nervously. "Just meeting some friends in Carmel." Something was off. His story felt rehearsed, hollow. Suddenly, my phone vibrated, lighting up with a breaking news alert. Escaped prisoner alert. Salinas Valley State Prison inmate, violent offender, last seen heading north toward Big Sur. Public urged to use extreme caution. I froze, cold dread seeping into my veins. Nick stared at the screen, his breathing suddenly rapid, eyes glittering with intensity. "Is something wrong?" I asked carefully. He didn't answer. Instead, he unzipped his backpack slowly, deliberately. I caught sight of a dirty coil of rope, stained brownish red at one end, and a torn photograph of a young woman, her face scratched out violently. My mouth went dry. "You shouldn't have seen that," he whispered, voice calm and cold. "Look, man, I don't want trouble," I stammered, pulse hammering painfully. "I'll drop you wherever you want." "It's too late for that," he said softly, hand inching toward the pocket of his jacket. "Cold night tonight, isn't it?" In that moment, everything exploded into chaos. He lunged across the seat, gripping a rusted hunting knife tightly, pressing it dangerously close to my neck. I swerved violently, tires screeching, gravel spraying from beneath the car. We skidded to a stop, inches from the edge of the cliff, the angry roar of waves echoing up from below. "Get out!" he ordered, voice low and steady. Panic surged, muscles freezing. He shoved me roughly from the vehicle, forcing me toward the precipice. Pebbles scattered beneath my feet, tumbling into the black abyss. "Why are you doing this?" I pleaded desperately, stalling. He smiled slightly, expression twisted in the moonlight. "Someone has to pay." "For what?" "They said I hurt people," he whispered bitterly. "But they hurt me first. Now I hurt them back." He paused, voice dropping chillingly. "Cold night tonight, isn't it?" Before he could push me forward, a surge of desperate strength ignited within me. I twisted violently, knocking his knife aside, fighting for control. We grappled dangerously close to the edge, breath ragged. In the struggle, he slipped suddenly, losing his footing, hands clawing desperately at the loose earth. "Help me," he gasped, eyes wide with genuine terror. Instinctively, I grabbed his arm trying to pull him back, but his weight dragged me downward. He slipped further, clutching frantically at my wrist. "Don't let go," he screamed. "I'm trying," I shouted, muscles burning, grip weakening, but his hands were slick with blood. Slipping steadily from my grasp, with a final terrified cry, he fell into darkness, the sound of his impact drowned out by the ocean's furious roar. I collapsed, gasping, heart pounding violently. Moments later, headlights appeared in the distance. Police cruisers responding to reports. I flagged them down desperately, recounting my nightmare in rapid, breathless bursts. Officers scoured the area thoroughly, their radios buzzing. One detective approached me afterward, expression grim. "You're lucky to be alive," he said quietly. "We've identified your hitchhiker as Nick Foster, escaped earlier tonight. Relief flooded me, so it's over?" But he shook his head slowly, eyes clouding with confusion. "Not exactly. Foster wasn't the violent offender from Selena's prison. He's just another disturbed criminal. Identity theft, stalking, assault. But he's not the escaped murderer." I stared blankly. "Then who is?" The detective sighed heavily. "Someone named Daniel Greer. He's still out here somewhere. Dangerous, unstable." My stomach tightened painfully as I stood there, police scanner crackling quietly in the background. A dispatcher's urgent voice broke through clearly. "Reports of another hitchhiker picked up 10 minutes ago near Big Sore River Inn. Driver currently not responding to calls. Repeat. Another hitchhiker situation in progress." I shuddered violently, chills crawling up my spine. "Cold night tonight, isn't it?" whispered a quiet voice, somewhere deep in my memory, echoing with haunting clarity. Greer was still out there, prowling the dark highway, preying on those foolish enough, like me, to stop. Big Sur's beauty had become a cruel facade, hiding monsters far worse than anything I'd imagined. And as the mist curled around me, freezing and relentless, I knew one terrible truth for certain. He was still watching, still waiting. The overseas highway had become a parking lot of panicked humanity. My rental car idled behind a line of brake lights stretching into the storm's darkening maw. Hurricane Lila churning toward the Florida Keys with Category 4 fury. The radio blared evacuation orders on loop. All residents and visitors must leave immediately. Too late. Wind rocked the car like a metronome. Palm fronds torpedoed past my windshield. Ahead, a minivan's bumper sticker taunted me. "Keys life. No worries." At 6:47 p.m., the storm surge flooded the highway. Marathon High School's gymnasium reeked of sweat and chlorine. Evacuees clustered in uneasy tribes. Sunburned tourists, grizzled fishermen, twitchy locals. I counted 37 of us. The janitor, a wiry man named Ruiz, padlocked the doors as windows rattled. "Generator will last till midnight if we're lucky," he shouted over the storm's scream. That's when I noticed him. He sat apart, mid-30s, military haircut, hands too clean for a Keys local. A fresh scratch curved from his temple to jawline. His eyes locked on every exit, every face, like a predator memorizing escape routes. I'd read the FBI bulletin at a gas station 2 hours earlier. Wanted, Jason Voss. Armed robbery, double homicide. Last seen near Big Pine Key. Tattoo of nautical star on left wrist. The stranger adjusted his sleeve. At 9:13 p.m., the power died. Flashlights bobbed like fireflies. A toddler wailed. The stranger stood abruptly, chair screeching. "Bathroom?" he asked Ruiz. "Down the hall. Watch for debris." He moved too quietly for a man his size. I followed. The bathroom mirror reflected his rolled sleeve as he washed his hands. The tattoo wasn't a nautical star. It was an 8-pointed compass rose, but on the sink, a wallet left carelessly open. Jason Voss's Florida ID stared up at me. Wind screamed through cracks in the building. "You're not Jason," I said, cornering him outside the supply closet. His smile chilled me more than the storm. "Neither is he." He nodded toward a fisherman arguing with Ruiz. "That's the real Jason Voss. I'm the one who's been tracking him." He flipped open a badge. DEA Agent Marcus Cole. We huddled near shattered windows as Cole explained. Boss isn't some random killer. He is a cartel chemist, developed a new drug that makes users suggestible. They're testing it in disaster zones. Easy to disappear people. As if summoned, the lights flickered on. The fisherman, Jason Voss, stood holding the generator's power cord. Found the problem, he announced too cheerfully. They moved fast. Voss's crew, a family of 4 tourists, blocked exits. The janitor Ruiz smiled, needle glinting in his hand. Hurricane's the perfect delivery system, Cole muttered, shoving me behind a stack of mats. Contaminate the water supply. Let first responders spread it nationwide. Gunfire popped. Screams erupted. In the storm's eerie lull at 11:03 p.m., I crawled through a broken window. Cole lay bleeding by the bleach-stained volleyball court. Go, he rasped. I'll blame the deaths on the hurricane. Saltwater touched on my knees as I waged toward submerged cars. Behind me, the generator roared back to life, powering refrigeration units for thousands of vials marked Hydra 9. They found me 3 days later, clinging to a channel marker. Authorities declared the shelter death storm related. No trace of Cole, no mention of vials. But yesterday, a package arrived. Inside, Cole's DIA badge crusted with blood, and a note. They're testing Hydra 9 in wildfire zones now. Look for the helpers. Tonight, smoke chokes the West Coast, and I keep checking my water bottles for odd tastes. There's a distinct feeling that comes when you're being watched. A prickling sensation between your shoulder blades. A weight on the back of your neck. Your body knows before your mind does. I felt it the moment I stepped onto the sidewalk in front of the white, 2-story house on 508 East 2nd Street in Villisca, Iowa. My road trip across America's forgotten landmarks had brought me to many macabre destinations. Lizzie Borden's house in Massachusetts, the Black Dahlia murder site in Los Angeles. But something about Villisca felt different, more intimate, more present, despite the century that had passed since 8 people, including 6 children, were bludgeoned to death as they slept. The Villisca Axe murder house stood remarkably preserved, a snapshot of 1912 frozen in time. White clapboard siding, green shutters, a wraparound porch where the killer likely stood, watching the Moore family through windows before entering in the dead of night. You're here for the 2 p.m. tour? Asked a woman in her 60s, clipboard in hand. Marta, according to her name tag, had the weathered look of someone who'd spent a lifetime in small-town Iowa, her eyes both friendly and assessing. Yes, I replied, signing the waiver she presented. I've studied the case for years. I actually run a true crime blog. Did a feature on Villisca last month. Martha's eyebrow raised slightly. Another documentarian. We've had 3 this week alone, as she led me, and 3 other tourists, a young couple and a middle-aged man, toward the front entrance. I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed from somewhere beyond Martha's scrutiny. The house has been restored to appear exactly as it did that night, in June 1912, Martha explained, her rehearsed speech carrying us through the front parlor. The Moore family, Josiah, Sarah, and their 4 children, along with 2 visiting Stillinger girls, were all killed with an axe belonging to Josiah himself. The house felt smaller inside than it appeared from the street. Low ceilings, narrow doorways, wallpaper in faded floral patterns, oil lamps that cast insufficient light into corners. The perfect setting for America's most infamous unsolved massacre. The killer covered all the mirrors and the glass on the doors, Martha continued, gesturing to a cloth-draped mirror in the hallway. Some people believe he didn't want to see his own reflection after what he'd done. The middle-aged man beside me shifted uncomfortably. Something about his movements caught my attention. His hands, calloused, scarred across the knuckles, fidgeted with a leather notebook. His eyes never settled on one spot for long, as if cataloging every detail for later reference. What do you think about the theory that the killer knew the family well? He asked Martha suddenly, his voice surprisingly soft for his bulky frame. That it was personal, not random. Martha's professional smile flickered. The prevailing theory is that it was someone local, yes. The killer knew to take the axe from the backyard coal shed, knew where everyone slept, and that they removed the bulbs from the oil lamps, the man added. nodding to himself, so they could see but not be seen. His eyes darted to me. I read your blog post about this case. Quite intimate knowledge you have. My stomach dropped. I hadn't mentioned my blog to him. A chill crawled up my spine as we moved upstairs to the bedrooms where the murders had occurred. The children's rooms, with small beds arranged just as they had been. The parents' room, where the first blows fell, all recreated with meticulous attention to historical accuracy. Each victim was struck at least 20 times, Martha said. The doctor who examined the bodies said he'd never seen such systematic violence. The killer took his time. The young couple murmured to each other, their earlier excitement curdling into genuine discomfort. But the man with the scarred hands looked satisfied. He scribbled something in his notebook, a half-smile playing at the corner of his mouth. When our gazes met, he whispered, "The problem with replicas is they lack the energy of the original." Don't you agree? The tour concluded back on the porch, where Martha handed out informational pamphlets. This was one of the first crime scenes ever photographed in America, she explained. Those images changed how we investigate murders. They're online now, the man with the notebook said. The crime scene photos. I've studied them extensively. Martha's professional demeanor slipped momentarily. Sir, those autopsy photos are not publicly available. The official ones, yes, but not the... Of course, he cut her off, sliding his notebook into a worn leather messenger bag. I must be thinking of something else. As we dispersed, I lingered in front of the house, taking photos with my DSLR camera. The White House against the blue Iowa sky should have looked innocent, picturesque even. Instead, it loomed in my viewfinder like something crouched and waiting. That's when I noticed the man with the notebook hadn't left. He stood half a block away, partially concealed behind a tree, watching me. When I lowered my camera, he melted away between houses. The Red Mill Motel sat just off Highway 34, 16 miles from Villisca. A classic roadside accommodation with doors facing the parking lot, neon sign buzzing, and thin walls carrying the sounds of adjacent rooms. I'd chosen it precisely because it wasn't in Villisca. I wanted some distance between myself and the murder house before nightfall. After checking in, I drove to a nearby diner for dinner. The place was nearly empty. Just a waitress wiping down counters, and an elderly couple finishing pie at a corner booth. "You're not from around here," the waitress said, pouring coffee without being asked. Her name tag read Diane. "Just passing through, visiting historical sites." "You mean the Axe murder house," she said flatly. "Most tourists do." I nodded, scanning the menu to avoid her judgment. "Be careful with that," she continued. "Some folks around here take that history too seriously." "What do you mean?" Diane glanced toward the kitchen, then lowered her voice. "We get different types of visitors. Most are just curious. Some are enthusiasts, collectors." "Collectors of what?" "Experiences. Artifacts." She shrugged. "There's a network of them. International. Trade items from famous crime scenes on the black market. Some say they use these items in rituals, attempting to capture the energy of the moment." Before I could press further, the bell above the door chimed. The man from the tour entered, notebook tucked under his arm. When he saw me, a look of recognition crossed his face, followed by something that might have been satisfaction. He took a booth on the opposite side of the diner, positioning himself to watch both me and the door. "That's one of them," Diane whispered, barely moving her lips. "Been through here 3 times this month." I ate quickly, paid, and left without looking his way again. In my rear-view mirror, I saw him exit shortly after, climbing into a dark pickup truck. Night in rural Iowa has a quality urban dwellers forget exists. Darkness so complete it feels like a physical presence, stars painfully bright against black velvet. Silence broken only by the occasional distant train or the buzz of insects. I'd been asleep for perhaps 2 hours when a notification woke me. My security app, alerting me that something had triggered the motion sensors on my car's dash cam. Heart pounding. I pulled up the live feed on my phone. A figure stood beside my car, face obscured by a hood. They moved with deliberate precision, placing something on my windshield before retreating out of the camera's view. As I watched, the feed flickered. Static interrupted the image. When it cleared, the figure was gone. Then, a new sound. Then, a new sound. Soft footsteps outside my motel room door. the gentle scrape of something being slid beneath it. I froze, eyes locked on the crack beneath the door. A shadow passed through the sliver of light, someone standing directly outside, listening. The footsteps retreated. I waited 5 agonizing minutes before approaching the door. A folded piece of paper had been slipped under. I opened it with trembling fingers. The collection requires fresh blood. Your hands have been chosen. Wow! The curator grabbing my room key and phone, I crept outside. The parking lot appeared empty, but a movement at the edge of my vision. A dark figure ducking behind the ice machine told me I wasn't alone. My car sat exactly as I'd left it, except for what rested on the windshield. A small, antique-looking hatchet, its wooden handle darkened with age, the metal head showing a patina only decades could create. It had been positioned carefully, blade pointing toward my motel room door. This wasn't a modern replica. This was old, authentic. With shaking hands, I took photos, then used a tissue to pick up the hatchet and place it in the trunk of my car. I didn't want it to touch it directly. Didn't want my fingerprints replacing whichever ones might already be there. Back in my room, doors locked and chair wedged under the handle. I studied the photos I'd taken. That's when I noticed the detail I'd missed. Carved into the wooden handle, nearly worn away with time, the initials J.M. Josiah Moore, whose axe had been used to murder his family in 1912. But that axe was supposed to be lost to history, never recovered. More disturbing was what I found when zooming in on one photo. In the reflection of my car window, a face was visible. The man with the notebook standing behind me when I thought I was alone. His lips curved in a satisfied smile. I called the local police, explained the situation. The bored-sounding dispatcher promised to send someone by in the morning. Lock your doors, she advised. Probably just kids playing pranks on the tourist. But I knew better. The hatchet was genuine, and so was the threat. Morning revealed 2 new developments. First, a new note slipped under my door during the night. Your fingerprints christen the artifact. The transfer is complete. The transfer is complete. The curator thanks you for your unwitting service. Second, the hatchet was gone from my trunk. The lock showed no signs of tampering. My dashcam recorded nothing. When I reviewed the security footage, I discovered a 17-minute gap between 3:02 a.m. and 3:19 a.m., where the recording had been cleanly erased. When the officer finally arrived, young, clearly skeptical, I had nothing to show him except the notes and my photos. Sir, we get these calls whenever tourists visit the murder house, he explained, not unkindly. People around here have complicated feelings about those who treat tragedy as entertainment. This wasn't a prank, I insisted. The hatchet was authentic. And now it's gone. The original murder weapon disappeared in 1912, he said, handing back my phone. Never found. Hard to authenticate something that doesn't officially exist. As he turned to leave, I noticed something on his belt, a key ring with an unusual fob, identical to the leather messenger bag the man with the notebook had carried. After he left, I checked out immediately, tossing my bags into the car and scanning the parking lot for any sign of the man with the notebook. As I approached my car, he stepped out from behind a maintenance shed, not hiding now, not pretending. Just standing there, holding what appeared to be an old-fashioned room key, likely a master key for the motel. You've done well, he called across the parking lot. The artifact needed your touch, your essence. The collection grows stronger with each transfer. I fumbled with my keys, desperate to get inside my car. We chose you specifically, he continued, his voice carrying easily in the still morning air. Your blog, your fascination, your fingerprints are now part of the lineage. He held up the hatchet, the one that had been in my trunk, turning it so the blade caught the sunlight. See you at Ludlow, he said, before walking unhurriedly to his truck. I peeled out of the parking lot, watching him shrink in my rearview mirror. He didn't follow. He didn't need to. 3 days and several hundred miles later, I reached Colorado Springs. My next stop on the dark tourism circuit was supposed to be the site of the Ludlow massacre. Instead, I checked into a chain hotel with tight security and began searching online for information about collectors of true crime artifacts, forums where enthusiasts traded information, sometimes items, from famous cases. On one obscure message board, I found a thread titled Villisca Acquisitions. The most recent post included a photo of the hatchet that had been on my windshield, now displayed in what looked like a glass case alongside other historical weapons. The caption, Newest edition courtesy of our unwitting courier. Fingerprints verified and preserved. The transference ritual is complete. Further down the thread, a comment from user the curator. International members, the Ludlow pickaxe will circulate next. Fingerprints required from subject, CV-117 before Japanese transport. I stared at my screen, the implications washing over me in sickening waves. I hadn't been targeted randomly. I'd been used as a mule, unknowingly transporting something illegal across state lines. My fingerprints were now on a potential murder weapon, and somehow that had been the goal all along. As I reached to close my laptop, another notification appeared. A new direct message. Every collector needs a specialty. Yours is now becoming apparent. The ritual requires 5 transfers. See you at Ludlow. The curator attached was a photo of my car in the hotel parking lot, taken within the last hour. And on the windshield, another artifact waited. A rusted pickaxe. Another piece of history stained with violence. Another piece I was apparently meant to deliver. My fingerprints adding some essential energy to whatever ritual these collectors were conducting. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know. I'm not checking out. Not going to my car. Because I finally understand what makes the Villisca case. What makes all these historical tragedies so uniquely horrifying. It isn't just what happened decades ago. It's that someone out there is ensuring the story never truly ends. That the violence continues, passed from hand to hand, artifact to artifact, blood to blood. And somehow, unwillingly, I've become part of the chain, still with us. Which story followed you the longest? Let us know in the comments. We're always watching. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. We've got more true horror on the way. This is dark, real horror. Real stories, real people, real fear. See you on the next road.